Okay, so there's a bazillion little problems that all kind of have roughly the same form. That I'm going to give you a certain amount of geometric information, and then you've got to figure out what do you know, draw the picture, what's the connection between what you need and what you have, and then solve and write down certain standard pat forms. So in this problem, I'm giving you two planes, and I claim I've actually given you direction. I'm giving you normal vectors for two planes. They're just sort of encoded in the equations. So here's our picture, though. Here's one plane, and by the way, this is probably not a to scale accurate picture, but I'm just going to draw a couple of planes here. Here's another plane like this, and what I'm looking for now is a line that's parallel to both of these planes. So my line is going to be like.
Does it matter if the planes are like perpendicular or parallel or whatever?
All that matters is that these two planes can't be parallel to each other.
Oh, that's what I drew.
I see.
Why can it not be parallel?
Because if they were parallel, then there would be many lines that were parallel to both planes. Yeah, so as I've got it drawn here, there's only one, going through.
Yeah, that's what I drew it in.
Yeah, so going through some particular point there's exactly one line that goes through that point that's parallel to both of these planes.
How can it be?
Because these two planes sort of, they point in different directions, and so if you're going to be parallel to both of them, like, so for example, here's a line. See, that line there is parallel to this plane?
Is it going through that plane?
No. It's supposed to, yeah, sorry about that. It's supposed to be kind of sitting inside there. So that line is, if these 2 points, you see what I'm saying? It's hard to draw these pictures. So this line is sitting entirely inside of this plane, so it's parallel to this plane. But it's not parallel to this plane.
Oh, it would happen right at that intersection of those two planes?
Sure.
That's where it would be parallel to both of them?
Well, no, I mean, this line is simply not parallel to that plane at all, right?
When you take one, that is parallel
that's right.
to both.
When you look at the intersection is going to be parallel to both.
Okay.
But also, any line parallel to the intersection is also parallel to both planes. They're supposed to be parallel, but I'm not doing a good job there. There's a zillion planes that are a zillion lines that are all parallel to these two planes, but they're all parallel to each other.
Right.
So I want to parameterize this one here. That's parallel to both planes, but also goes through this particular point. So okay. Now and by the way, so if in your picture, sounded like in your picture that you originally drew, you drew one plane, and then you drew another plane like that, and whenever you draw something where two things have something in common, you better make sure they actually have that in common. Otherwise, your picture is misleading. And so these, in being parallel, would have to have parallel normal vectors, which means that these equations would have to look awfully similar, and they don't.
So the meaning normal vectors would have to be factors of each other.
Yeah, multiples of each other. That's right. That's right, and they aren't. So, in fact, you can see from the algebra of the problem, this first one has normal vector 2, -4, 1.
Right.
And this one here is a totally different vector. 5, 6, -1. Yeah, and these are just not multiples of each other. So that means that they can't be parallel. So we better not draw them as being parallel, or else you're right where our picture is kind of off.
Okay.
Yeah. So so we've got these two planes. They're not parallel to each other. That means that they intersect in a line. That line's parallel to both. We're looking for a line parallel to that, but that goes through this point. So so fine. So I need to find a V, and I need to find an x0. And good news is x0's given.
It's going to be the cross product of the two
Cross product.
normal vectors.
That's right. Yeah. So that's a great observation. Let me flesh that out here. So there, let's call that N1. Let's call that N2. So you're right. This vector has to be parallel to the line. Therefore, this vector has to be parallel to both of these planes. And if it's parallel to both of these planes, it's going to have to be perpendicular to both of these normal vectors. So a great way to find something perpendicular to two vectors is to take their cross product. Absolutely. And if you work out that arithmetic, that'll give you this vector. X0 is given. X0 is the point 1, 1, 2. And then your parameterization of the line is that it's x0 plus TV.
That's going to be my downfall, drawing those pictures.
Yeah, drawing the pictures is hard. It takes some practice. And by the way, I mean, I was not born being able to draw pictures this semi-competently.
I just assumed like when I first saw the problem, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
lines,
Okay,
like just
right.
put them on top of each other.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't assume to like put them like at a weird angle or something like that.
Right. Okay. So, so this exercise has taught you something. Think of it that way. Okay. So, in other words, there's lots of little things like this that are. This makes perfect sense to you now, I assume.
Yeah.
Right. And so you'll never make that mistake ever again. So so we've accomplished something. And don't view this as, oh gosh, I didn't understand how to do this problem. View it now as, oh, okay, this problem has made an observation for me that'll be useful in the future. Yeah. Yep. And by the way, the actual physically taking the pen and drawing lines on the piece of paper and having it conjure the images to your mind that you want them to is not something that very many people are born being able to do. I had to practice this a lot. So I encourage you to think about that. So, for example, when you want to draw a plane, by the way, simply drawing straight lines is a trick in and of itself. I mean, that just takes a little bit of practice. You just got. I have filled up pages just doing this. Just pages and pages and trying to figure out the mechanics of the motion of the pen and just how, you know what I mean? It's like learning how to shoot a basketball, except not, but but it's a physical thing that you have to do with repetition. So if you want to draw a plane, a good trick to that is draw a parallelogram sitting inside the plane, and when you draw that, keep in mind that this next edge that I draw, as I draw it, it better be parallel to that line. So you got to actually think about that. In other words, when I draw this next edge, I'm going to be looking over here. My pen's over here. I'll be looking over here. And that's, it could have done better, but I've done worse. And likewise, this next line needs to be parallel to this. And there you go. And then you can just kind of scratch that off. And so that you can kind of sort of see right. Anyway, practice. Stop the recording.
Thank you very much.
No problem.